Now, call the meeting to order. And I
Okay.
understand we have a presentation.
We do.
Mr. Cameron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, obviously we have an election schedule or election in 2024. So you ask, why would I be talking about it in June of 2023? A lot of people have asked over, at least the last 2 years, when someone will ask, when is the next election schedule or when do people run for office? And whenever I try to explain this, it's like, even as a staff, we've actually had it on a dry erase board to try to remember because we've had a number of vacancies and filled those positions. And so keeping track of what the election schedule looks like. And so tonight we're recording this meeting so that for future questions and references, people can reference the presentation that we have. So this slide deck is available, will be made available to the public. I know the city attorney would tell me the same thing. She's gone to great lengths to explain this inside the document. Everything that's listed where you might see your name or someone else's name, like Minnie Mouse or Mickey Mouse, no kidding. They're all for reference. It's not suggesting that anyone's running for office. It's just I want to make sure that qualifier is out there early, is that we're using them as examples and reference, which is also highlighted in the memo. As you all were forwarded, and also this will be made available to the public, is the memo from the city attorney where I had requested a legal opinion with some questions. I'm going to just read this out loud just for reference for those that do not have access to this online, but that will provide this memorandum because it is something that would be subject to the community's review anyway. But what is the correct procedure and timeline for filing council member vacancies under the charter and applicable state law? Again, these are questions I presented to the city attorney just so that we could have them presented to you and to other members of the community. How should election results be identified, calculated if two candidates were to run for two seats in the same ward? 3, if the school district is able to submit ballot initiatives prompting voters to select more than one candidate for board member positions on the same ballot, is the city also permitted to do so? What should the ballot look like for filing or filling the vacancies in the April 2024 election? So she addresses each of these 4 questions in the memorandum to answers those 4. What I want to just show you is what our charter says tonight, and to kind of show you what that ballot would look like, and then some of the information that she's provided for you tonight also adds a little more color to what other cities have done, just to demonstrate that the laws and the statutes that she's referencing are being consistently run throughout the state that are consistent with us. And so I hate to read slides to people, but this is the charter. But I'm going to go through the slide deck with you tonight. So the election process per charter, election and terms, council members from each ward shall be elected to serve staggered 4-year terms. At each regular municipal election, council members shall be elected to fill the offices, those whose terms expire. For those that do not know, in 2019, the charter was presented to the community, which was amended from 2-year terms to 4-year terms. So historically, the city was, every year there was an election in April that voted on 2-year terms. One would be expiring, so there'd always be a regular election in April. And in 2019, that changed because it went to 4-year terms. So this is in the charter, section 14.2, election of city officials. I just want to highlight the highlights here, that each municipal election shall be in April of 2020, shall serve 4-year terms. At the municipal election of April 2021, council members elected to fill offices with expiring terms from all wards shall serve 4-year terms, which I just state. The bottom line is that it intended this provision to establish the required staggered terms as set forth in this charter. The question has been asked is, well, we have a regular, what I asked the attorney is, I said, when I read the charter, it states that every April is when the regular municipal election would be. So that's where you go into lawyer mode and attorney mode, and you start evaluating the state statutes where it's referred to when the next municipal election was after the charter was amended, which would be in 2024. Therefore, since there was vacancies since I believe 2020, and I'll go to that on the next slide, those terms were appointed by the mayor and are appointed to fulfill the term until the next municipal election that was scheduled, which would be April of 2024. So these are the terms that are expiring. Councilmember Franklin, Councilmember Wilson, Ward 2, Councilmember Updike, And then so you got vacant Ward 4 council member, former council member Mitchell, and then the mayor's term will be expiring as well. So these are actual terms that were voted on that are still, so as you can see, there are 4 there that were elected. Councilwoman Poole was elected, but hers is not up until 2025. So the process for filling vacancies, again, we had vacancies to fill in this time, in that, as we stated, the mayor would make those appointments. But a vacancy in the council shall be filled for the remainder of the unexpired term, if any, at the next regular municipal election. But the mayor, with the advice and consent of the council, by majority vote of all of its requiring members, shall fill the vacancy with a qualified person until the person elected to serve the remainder of the expired terms takes office. So therein lies the question that people have asked multiple times, like, should we not be running a municipal election in April? There's always a April on the calendar, and it always changes. And so the next year at the regular municipal election, should that not take place? And so the next regular municipal election, per the last charter change in 2019, would have made that in April of 2024. So there's been a lot of questions around that terminology. Even myself, which is what I was asking for from the city attorneys, like, let's make sure we have the legal opinions that all line up. So I will tell you this, I've asked 3 different attorneys and got the same answers by all 3 attorneys, that yes, this is the correct approach for us addressing to fill the vacancies. Because if you read that just on its term, I'd say, well, the next regular municipal election would be every April. But that was the way the regular municipal elections took place before the charter changed from 2-year terms. So these are the terms that are expiring in 2025, but on the April 2024 ballot. So you got Councilmember Dykeman, who's deceased. Ward 4, current appointee is Clint Garlick. Councilmember Grims resigned, current appointee Brandon Self. Councilmember Self resigned, moving to a different ward. Ward 1, and current appointee is Eric Gerke. So, and all those would be councilmember, apologize for the first name, but it all would be in those positions are appointed, but they were appointed to serve until the next municipal election, which would be April of 2024. Therefore, on the ballot in 2024, you're going to have 8 positions, 7 city, almost put city managers, 7 council members, plus the mayor. You got 7, again, seats up for election, and these are the way that they will look. It's actually, I believe, Councilmember Wilson would not have anyone on that ballot for Ward 2 other than those. Well, I guess it wouldn't, like, again, those are just a reference, but that's the ward that would be up. And Ward 2 would be Councilwoman Poole. 2020, yeah, I'm sorry, in 2025. Any questions regarding this? Because this is, like, again, when people ask, like, because we've had a lot of vacancies and a lot of appointments, and so it gets really confusing. Like, well, why is there 7 on at one time? Because the next municipal election requires those vacancies to have to be appointed by the community.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
So what was the deal with Miss Poole? You said she was in a different alignment than...
So yeah, basically her election class, she is the only one remaining in that class, because those 3 that are there, Self, Grims, Dykeman, are no longer in that capacity. She was voted in with those other 3.
And so this is how it stands right now, currently.
That is correct.
That's the way the charter's set up.
That is correct.
Sorry.
Yes.
So say I wanted to run, obviously I have to, it looks like.
Yes.
But what if I didn't want to run for this seat? What if I wanted to run for this seat? Could I do that? So instead of having to turn around a year later and run for another election, could I just run for this one?
That is correct. As long as it's in your ward. And so,
Okay.
and I'll explain that on the last.
Do I have to switch seats though, like physically?
Yeah, we would probably get you a bigger one, taller one.
Well, okay, taller, it's nice, because the other way hurt.
So not a follow-up question to that question. So then with the seat, if that were to happen, let's say, and vacate that seat, does that seat then become available for a 1-year term, or is that?
We're getting there.
Okay.
We're getting there, because that's why I'm glad we're having this conversation, because that's why I'm glad it's recorded for everyone that can see it and watch it, is because these are great questions that we needed. That's why the legal questions were presented and said, listen, let's get an opinion, and just so that everyone understands what it looks like. There's Mayor Matt Russell again.
There you go.
How it's decided per charter and state law. Candidates may run for one vacancy only. So no person shall file a declaration of candidacy for one city office and without withdrawing file for another city office to be filled at the same election. Any person violating the section shall be disqualified for running for any city office at the subject election. So our charter is consistent with state law. It's listed there as 115.351 of RISMO, the state statute. Says the same thing, no person shall file for one office and without withdrawing file for another office to be filled at the same selection. So each vacancy is a city office. So that's the one thing that, excuse me, as a city attorney, Ms. McCullough came up with was each position represents an office. So if you've got two in each ward or each seat represents an office, therefore you cannot run for both at the same time. And therein lies the question. So this is the question that if you look at a school board election, which Ms. McCullough has provided for you tonight as well, and at your desk there, that school boards, actually it says that you can pick two. Well, state statute, when it comes to school board elections versus city council elections or elected official in that capacity, is different. So it can be a little bit complicated, but those are questions that are like, well, wait a minute, a school board, it says pick two. And so there's examples of that in your packet tonight. So this is how it's decided. The council shall canvass the election, but pretty much what it says, the candidate receiving the highest number of votes for each office shall be declared elected and inducted into the office at that time. And this is what the confusion was in the city was, the belief was, or has historically been thought of, was whoever, if you had two open seats and you ran the person that got the highest number of votes, got the 4-year term, and the one that got the second highest votes got the 1-year term. And so with the work of legal counsel and reviewing that with and basically this has been backed up by the Lauber law firm that we actually utilize as outside counsel that does a lot of the municipal work for the state and that we refer to a lot. They also validated this review even later today. So really, excuse me, that's why you don't eat before you talk. So in the back of this memo and what you have tonight, and I'm sorry for those that don't, we have copies for you. You will see what the example ballot would look like in April of next year. So again, this is not suggesting that these folks are running for office, but I'm going to read this out loud so people from the community that do not have access to this can see it. But it would look like a sample ballot. And it said for council member Ward 1, 4-year term, it states there, Eric Franklin and John Doe. Basically, so on the second one down, it says for Councilmember Ward 1, 1-year term, it says Eric Gerke or Jane Doe. So you cannot place your name on both. You can only be on one of those terms. And so Councilmember Gerlich, like you're saying, is if I want the 4-year term, you would have to, when you go in to apply, you'd be applying for the 4-year term, but you cannot apply for the 1-year term. And obviously the mayor's would not be anything different because it's on schedule. But really, this is the challenge with the vacancies. There's also or the appointments that take place. Obviously, when you set out, no disrespect in certain situations, because some things are unavoidable whenever you have vacancies, but you never intend to have a vacancy in the council position whenever you do the election. But things like that have happened. I can safely say that I've seen it a lot more here in Republic, and not just before the 2019 elections. And so one of the things that will definitely need to be evaluated or consideration, not tonight, and it's not something we need to do, but it's definitely listed as a recommendation, is should people, if there's a vacancy, be allowed to serve beyond a certain point as an appointed position. Again, that would take a charter amendment by the people to do that. The second thing would be worth consideration is staggering the years between elections to every 2 years. Therefore, you would have an election every 2 years, and that would take care of that scenario at the same time. So that's a question that would be put forth before the people to do a charter change. That would help eliminate, should you have this situation, because, sorry, if we were without, vacancy, things happen, and vacancies take place, and it's beyond our control. But this is kind of the path forward for the city. But there are recommendations, I think, that we could at least place before the people also in the election in April that could probably consider changing that charter that would allow that term to be for an additional year to change the charter. Therefore, it would make it a 2-year term potentially. But I think we'd have to change the charter. I like that song.
That's moderated too.
Now, Are there any questions? And Councilmember Gerlich, I did not put Bowser for your, that's the attorney's fault.
I'm shocked that the attorney would use copyrighted material by Disney and Nintendo Corporation.
Yes.
Mr. Cameron, so what exactly would occur, let's say, whether it was that 4-year term or the 1-year term? I know a lot of times around here we have uncontested, but sometimes elections where no one even signs up. Would that 1-year, 4-year seat then become an appointable position in the current manner for that term, or would that's what we're trying to address, to fix more or less? I mean, is that still, what if no one fills up for these seats? Is it
It would turn into an appointed position until the charter was changed.
until the charter was changed
Yep.
or that term was up?
Yes, which is why, again, I think that not for today, but for a later discussion, which charter should be reviewed every 10 years. But this potential scenario, like, I've just not seen it. I've seen it where in different cities, they just can't get people to run. I don't want to use those cities by name because it just would be like, but I've seen it where they're dealing with write-in ballots and not getting anybody to even write in. So I think that's,
Recently even.
yeah, it's concerning. So getting a charter amendment before the people just to say, stagger them every 2 years would allow for then, every 2 years there's an election, so you would take care of the question of someone having a 3.5-year term on an appointed position. So kind of changing that where we'd stagger it. So you're going to have somebody that's going to probably run and get a term. And then once the charter's changed, it would have, in that election, they would get actually a 2-year term, probably to complete that, so there is no more appointments. I think that's correct. Am I correct?
Yes.
What's the cost? You know, like you talked about having additional elections. What's the cost to have that on the ballot?
Whenever you run them together with other agencies, so like when you're running a municipal election, there's going to be a lot of other people running next April. So that ballot's not, if we ran one like in August, if you're not running one with someone else, I think Springfield's getting ready to run one on recreational marijuana maybe in August. I think I saw that. So if you partner that with someone in Greene County where the election commission is pulling all that together, then you split that cost based upon population and ballot boxes. But if you have like a municipal election, you've got them in all the cities in the county. So it's definitely a lot more cost effective to do this in April. That's why either you do a charter vote, historically probably be in April or November would be normal, just because that you're sharing that cost too. But you can run them in August. I just don't think that trying to do a ballot measure on a charter change in August to try to correct it would get there probably I'm going to say $50,000. But if there was somebody else on the ballot, you could probably do that in consideration. But there's other charter amendments we've talked about that we did not get done with the last. The last charter change we did, there was 10 questions, I believe. We could have gone to 15 or more because it hadn't been done since it originally been adopted. Yes.
And this is just kind of a consideration. What about changing it back to a 2-year term from the 4-year term? Would that resolve this situation that we're currently in?
It could.
So I know that's something definitely that after the fact, something we had in conversation. I sat through all of this, and so I know there was a lot of concern back when that did pass about 4-year term, finding people that were interested, having ballots where uncontested, people that didn't sign up. So I would like to look at also exploring changing it back to the 2-year term.
That's completely up to your pleasure. That's not something that we technically as a staff work on. It's basically what the discussion is that comes from you. I'm not familiar with anyone that didn't sign up for a position though. Since I've been, those positions have all been, that have run for an office, there's been someone's name on the ballot. It's just been when they vacate, it's hard to get people to do that.
Sure. And we have a high rate of vacancy, and that's kind of where I'm looking at it, just on throughout finding people that are interested in serving up here. It's always difficult when you're addressing a 4-year commitment versus a 2-year commitment. A lot of people, in my experience, are more attracted to a 2-year commitment than a 4-year commitment. But that's just thinking through.
No other questions? You must have covered the material really well.
Well, the staff have worked very, very hard on this. I can't tell how many times we've sat down at a dry erase board and say, could someone else tell me again whose term is doing what? And quite frankly, for Laura as the city clerk and for all that to keep that stuff straight, I appreciate the staff working on it, because I think we all had it on a board, took pictures with our phones so we didn't forget it. Laura's tired of pulling up the data for us again, because it's like people ask and I'm like, you know what, I think we need to do a work session, and I think we need to televise it. And if there's any additional questions, they can present them so that we can have more discussion in the future about, listen, what is the best thing for the charter? Because there needs to be a charter discussion. It's one of the goals that I've set forth in the next year, is that we just evaluate the charter in its general form as to anything else that might be worth noting. But there's just a few other little changes that we've changed since state statutes have changed. But if nothing else, I appreciate your time.
I got a question.
Oh, yes.
I always have a question.
Was you choking on your cookie?
Oh, man, pretty much. Okay. Several years back when I signed up for this, it didn't matter the time limit. I was going to serve the city because I believe in it. So if it's 1 year or if it's 10 years, I'm committed to it.
Yeah. How long have you been on?
20-some years.
Yeah.
You ought to see my Ward 2, what all it covers.
Yeah, Boston Lane was a dirt road, wasn't it?
Yep,
I'm glad it got paved before I moved there,
me too.
because I wouldn't want to be, I would say that I got it paved. Okay, thank you.
We no other questions?
Mr. Mayor, I would just like to say thank you. This has been a difficult subject just to lay it out and try to figure it out. So I really appreciate just laying it out so that we can see it and the public can see it. And that alone eliminates a lot of questions and a lot of headaches on trying to dig through that and figure it out, figure out between the changes and everything else. So thank you for doing that.
Hey, you're welcome. Well, here's the thing about it is what I love about this venue, and it's something to explain. When you have to email each individual, it's difficult. This is the venue by the charter where it's where we're supposed to do that discussion. And we have discussions tonight about the same thing. So it's easier than trying to answer one person individually, where everybody would like to know the same answer, but they pop up at different intervals. And you're like, when you get one or two questions, you're like, okay, that's just an anomaly. Let's answer it. When you've had it 4 or 5, now 10 times, you're like, we're doing a presentation, we're going to video it. So thank you for your time and coming out and getting a sandwich while you're at it. Thank you.